Everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to today's session, Transforming the Workplace with AI, Ethics, Security, and Innovation. This is the first in a webinar series that is hosted by Golden Gate University and TrustMe.ai. My name is Miria Taig, and I'm thrilled to be your moderator today. I serve as a strategic advisor for TrustMe.ai. I focus on AI-driven business innovation, workforce transformation, and growth. This session is part of our larger four-part series designed to help professionals, businesses, and academic communities navigate the evolving role of AI in the workplace. Our goal is to provide practical insights, real-world examples, and thought-provoking discussions on how AI can be effectively integrated into different industries while maintaining ethical, secure, and people-centric approaches. So before we dive in, I would like to take a moment to thank our incredible partners at Golden Gate University who have made this series possible. A special thank you to Siazadeh, Judy Lee, and Robert Schaffner, who have all played instrumental roles in coordinating this event, providing thought leadership, ensuring a fantastic experience for all of our attendees. And I'd also like to thank the wider GGU marketing and on-site support team for their efforts in making today's event a success. So today, we're going to be focusing again on AI integration in the workplace, strategies for successful adoption, and workforce innovation. AI is transforming industries at an unprecedented pace, and organizations are trying to navigate new challenges and opportunities as they implement AI-driven strategies. So in this session, we're going to explore the key drivers of AI adoption and its impact across industries, how AI is shaping leadership, workforce management and security, ethical considerations in AI implementation, and real-world examples from our panelist industries. So we'll start with panelists' introductions, we'll follow by a structured discussion, and then a Q&A session. So for those of you that are online or in the room, you can contribute to the Q&A via the chat, and we will answer those questions at the end. Okay, so panelist introductions. I am really honored to introduce all of our distinguished panelists, starting first with Yunus Aftab, who's the founder and CEO of TrustMe.ai, a technology leader and AI strategist with deep expertise in software development, enterprise AI solutions, and digital transformation. Yunus specializes in scaling AI systems, ethical implementation, and business innovation through automation. Thank you, Yunus. We also have Mike Horn, executive coach and leadership consultant, a people-first leadership expert specializing in organizational culture, leadership strategies, and AI's impact on workforce transformation. Mike also advises executives on navigating AI-driven change and fostering employee engagement in an AI-powered workplace. Thank you, Mike. Tony Stolis, life sciences strategist. Anthony specializes in life sciences innovation, focusing on supply chain, manufacturing for biopharmaceuticals and medical devices. He's going to be providing us with insights on how AI is enhancing patient outcomes, streamlining logistics, and optimizing medical supply chains. Thank you, Tony, for joining us today. And last but not least, we have Larry Chow, Managing Director of the Ethical AI Governance Group. Larry focuses on AI governance risk and compliance, helping organizations implement AI responsibly, and he's going to be discussing the ethical and regulatory considerations companies must prioritize when adopting AI. So without further ado, let's jump in and kind of get a sense of AI overall. And where I'd really like to start is, what are the primary drivers for organizations to be adopting AI? What are the benefits that they're starting to see? Larry, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, I mean, we've been fortunate at the Ethical AI Governance Group to engage with corporates, startups, governments, all around for the opportunity. And I think what's clear is everybody sees the opportunity around AI. Everybody wants to sort of figure out the right way, but there is no sort of playbook in terms of how you build an AI company, how you sort of do this sort of responsibly. And so one of the things we're trying to do is basically build a community of stakeholders, AI practitioners all around the world, and figure out how to do it. And we know, drivers for this include, the ideas of automation, the idea of sort of how you do data-driven sort of decision-making. But there are a lot of, things that need to be done in place beforehand to sort of go do this properly. But the challenge we have is we see it's moving so quickly. How can we sort of go and sort of keep up with this? And that's sort of the challenge we have in terms of how do you navigate these different frameworks like the EUA Act and the stuff in NIST and Singapore? And sort of how do you sort of do this sort of on the global scale? And so that's one of the key things we need to do to sort of figure out, hey, what are the frameworks that we want to do? And part of it starts with the idea of, we use the term ethical AI, we use the term responsible AI. People sort of also have caught on to this term sort of human-centric AI. And they're used somewhat interchangeably, but they do have some sort of distinct meanings. Like ethical AI really depends on sort of what your values are. Responsible AI is really about sort of business practices, and human-centric AI is about how do you use AI to not replace humans, but sort of augment them. And so I think these are all considerations that enterprises need to make when they sort of think about what is their AI strategy and how do they go forward in terms of implementing AI.
Yeah, excellent points. And Tony, I know that resonates closely with some of what you're experiencing as well in your industry. Do you want to talk a little bit about the drivers you're seeing?
Yeah, the main drivers in the space that I work in being operational, and the key thing is, these companies are working to make sure that they can get therapies to patients and that the therapies work properly when they get there, adhering to all quality standards, regulations, et cetera, and doing it repeatedly and consistently. And so where I'm seeing the potential for the most impact, and it's still evolving, there's a lot of experimentation going on, but is in the area of, where is the real value? The challenge I see is there's been this tendency to chase the shiny object,
Yes.
as opposed to chase the thing that really can have business impact and ultimately impact patients in a positive way. So I see that as the biggest challenge.
Yeah, wonderful. Eunice.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, building on kind of what Tony and Larry are saying, I think based kind of talking to the customers and everybody in the ecosystem we talk to, we feel like it's really, you can look at the benefits as actual benefits and perceived benefits. I think right now where you think about companies driving a top-down strategy, they believe there's a lot of value. The perceived benefits are there. If you look at enterprise strategy, they are including it part of your subscription. If you look at the big, large AI companies, they are including AI as part of their subscriptions and charging more for it. So meaning that they believe that we're providing you the benefit already, whether you haven't realized it or not. But when it comes down to actual benefits, I think there is tremendous amount of benefit that people have realized or channeling to realize, building applications, building assets, reducing cost, driving innovation faster, cutting down their cycle times, trying to experiment with new things quickly. So definitely the potential is there, and leadership is often forced to sign up for the perceived benefits. And I think that's where the conversation needs to be, that those perceived benefits without a real strategy might never be realized. And if that is the case, that will be a challenge. Just to quote one of the Goldman Sachs studies that I was looking at, 67 to 70% of the CIOs have already invested in AI, but more than 3/4 of them do not have the pathway to realize the ROI. So yes, you're making an investment and the potential benefit is there, but is it calculated? Is it proven? That's where having a thoughtful strategy in terms of doing this in a sensible, practical, consistent, step-by-step way, I think is pretty important.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously some of the challenges with developing strategies and leadership, and I know leadership is near and dear to your heart, Mike, so can you talk a little bit about the drivers that you're seeing in your work?
Well, so interesting. Thank you so much, and appreciate it. And I'll probably be building on most of the analysts' comments. I think about three things generally in terms of people and culture. I don't think there's a human resources leader that I've met in the Bay Area or anywhere across the US that isn't dealing with the topic of AI in their organization or business. And I think typically we come at it from, as an HR person, we come at it from an efficiency standpoint, just like all the other business colleagues. I think about some of the big organizations, right here in the Bay Area, Meta, Salesforce, Workday, all have announced employee cuts relative to AI. So we're still dealing with that, I think, in the HR and the people and culture stuff. What does it mean? Certainly AI should provide us with greater transparency. It should provide us with new topics in leadership. But this quest for efficiency has always been one. I used to work for a productivity consulting firm a bazillion years ago, where we would promise our clients that for every $1 million you'd invest, you'd get, a 3-to-1 return. So I wonder if some
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like, with our new candy. But so there's this efficiency aspect. There's certainly the innovation aspect.
Yeah.
How do we free up people? And I really love the, I think what you said around people centricity. How do we have a new era of leadership that deals with remote work, that deals with AI, that deals with the gig economy, that creates real space now for people centricity in organizations? And what does that mean in terms of AI, that every company, whether you're a 2-person company or a 90,000 person organization, how do we deal with these things?
Yeah, I think, and that actually leads us really well into the next topic that we want to talk a little bit about. Is we talked about some of the drivers, some of the challenges that people are experiencing, but as we're facing those challenges, what are a few of them, and what are some of the solutions that you have seen work best at overcoming those challenges? And I think, Mike, you kind of led right into that. So if you'd like to start, kick us off.
Well, I think we're all looking for solutions. Here as an educator at Golden Gate University, we're certainly challenged by the topic of AI. Not only in terms of what our students produce, but in terms of what we offer and how we think about that. So I think all of us are challenged. My wife yesterday got something from the Department of Education that said, eliminate all references to diversity and inclusion in your material. And I said, aren't you going to have some AI tool do that? To look at for every reference first. So, we need new approaches. We need new leadership that will help managers think about freeing up the human potential that comes along with automation. And I think that's going to be one of the key drivers that every leader is going to have to think about immediately and in the next few years.
Yeah, excellent insights. Eunice, it looks like you've got some follow-up on that.
Yeah, no, I think
Share.
building on that, I think if as a business, right, and you're thinking about AI, what is critical to realize, AI is not a replacement for a workflow necessarily. Because if that is all you're doing, then it's just creating an automated system and doesn't have any process to think. So really, I think there needs to be a thought process that we think about AI as a collection or intersection of people, processes, and product. As Mike was kind of leading into that, as we think about it as well, that hey, with AI, you don't need to necessarily just think about what outcomes it's producing, but who is producing it. You need to, with AI, when you introduce AI, it doesn't necessarily mean that import doesn't modify your existing process. Maybe the process needs to be rethought. So I think with AI, it's important that as a corporate, especially as anybody who's using it, if you're using it in a limited fashion, yeah, you can drive limited benefits, and it's not really true AI. But if you want to use it to their maximum potential, you need to think about that intersection. You need to you have to change your people strategy. You have to modify your processes. You have to think about products differently. Like with this, a workflow, I think the example I use is in the 2000s, there were a lot of yellow taxi, red taxi.coms, and right? And so, but the answer was Uber. That digitizing an inefficient flow into AI is not necessarily the answer. Answers are lying, and that's I think the biggest challenge in enterprises face today, that a lot of times they are focusing too much on taking a flow and saying, hey, can I use AI to make it better? Yeah, you can use AI to make it better, but you might never realize its ROI, you might never realize its potential.
Yeah, and as you're talking about the intersection, I mean, clearly, Tony, in your space, there's no more apparent intersection as we talk about actual patients and pharmaceuticals. And so for you, what are the solutions that you're seeing being brought to the table in terms of utilizing and overcoming AI challenges?
Yeah, I think the main thing is what you touched on, Eunice, which is focusing on the fact that this starts with the process that needs to happen. And then it's what technology can be brought to bear and how to enable a process. So really thinking about what are the places where AI, for example, can do something faster, better than a human, not necessarily instead of, but as an augmentation of the human, what the human's doing. So some examples that we see in my industry is, can machine learning, artificial intelligence help me help me schedule my equipment maintenance more effectively in my
Yeah.
bioreactor facility, so that I'm not doing it at a time when I'm at peak manufacturing need, or that I'm not doing it too late or too early, and
Yeah.
how I harmonize all that. Or even some of the seemingly mundane things, such as I have, 25 standard operating procedures, all related to the same thing, written awkwardly in different prose over time.
Yep.
And could you feed them all into a Gen AI tool and come up with one set
Yeah.
of procedures, and then you're able to onboard people and train them more quickly to do their jobs.
Yeah.
So those types of things.
Yeah.
Or the other example is when you do have quality challenges and finding the root cause. And that's something that can be very painstaking, and that's where machine learning, advanced analytics, artificial intelligence can really help.
Yeah, yeah, great insights, because a lot of what I'm hearing, especially in that, is making sure that we're connecting our AI utilization to the end value for people. So again, we're going back to that intersection of people with AI to make something better and improve, not instead of people. Larry, what are you seeing in your space?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's been interesting is sort of this last explosion of AI. It's really been sort of around generative AI, sort of these large language models. But what we've seen there's a lot of challenges associated with that. I think number one, it's really expensive to basically be able to sort of implement this. Companies are spending billions of dollars to sort of in infrastructure and GPUs to sort of go and sort of invest this. And so I think what we're seeing is the LLM has been very impressive, but I think that probably isn't the solution for most enterprise adoption. And for us, like our viewpoint is that the future is really going to be around sort of open models. It's going to be around sort of small language models.
Yep.
It's going to be sort of around agentic workflows. And so this is really, I think, important for sort of widespread sort of corporate adoption of this. I think whether you're in healthcare like Tony, or whether you're in the finance industry, you have a lot of different regulations that you have to deal with. And so having sort of financial data in a hospital, or having medical data in a bank probably doesn't sort of make sense. And so I think it's really about sort of targeting sort of these really industry-specific use cases,
Yep.
and sort of giving sort of the expertise where you also aren't beholden to the big tech companies, and you can use open source in your own premise and whatnot, and basically you can sort of really drive your future.
Yeah. Yeah, oh, that's excellent. And that actually carries us right into our next topic, where we're going to be exploring some of the industry-specific insights. And so, Larry, you started to touch on this already, where different industries and the applications and solutions are naturally going to be different, maybe evolve at different paces. So can you talk to us a little bit more about how does AI differ across industries, and what are some specific challenges that maybe you want to call out that certain sectors are facing?
Yeah, I mean, I think sort of continuing on this from my last point, I think there's some both practical and some sort of regulatory reasons to sort of drive things in this direction. I think when everybody saw what they were able to do with DeepSeek, was sort of this smaller model, it was open source. You can sort of see like maybe you don't necessarily need to invest billions of dollars, and really where you can sort of innovate on is sort of at the application layer. And so it's an analog to like the old browser wars. Back in the day. It wasn't Internet Explorer that sort of said it versus Mosaic versus Netscape. But having sort of that browser, it opened up opportunities for Facebook, for Google, for whoever. And so the question is like, how can we sort of enable sort of that kind of innovation? The challenge though is what we see is like working with startups. We see for every dollar they raise, they probably spend 60 or 70 cents of that, giving it to the NVIDIAs and the Amazons and the cloud service providers of the world. And so the question is like, what can they do to sort of be more specific, as well as use their industry-specific data as a competitive differentiator to basically go solve specific problems. So ultimately, the opportunity with AI is not so much, I think, around productivity gains. It's for how can you really, improve outcomes for your company, for your customers and whatnot. And I think that's sort of the direction towards that.
Oh yeah, that's great insights. And Tony, you had some really unique insights from the supply chain and manufacturing side of things as well, which I know is really looking to maximize the benefits of AI. So can you talk to us a little bit about what are you seeing there?
So some of it I've already brought up around operations on the manufacturing floor, but there's also some potential to really accelerate sustainability opportunities in a lot of industries, including the one that I'm in life sciences, leveraging technology. How do I tie together my planning and my procurement of raw materials and my manufacturing and my outbound logistics. So for example, I'm not sending half full pallets of material all around the globe.
Yep.
You know, full pallets, right? little things like, they
Yeah.
seem like little things, but those are the things that can really impact sustainability. And it's interesting because while impacting sustainability, they actually save money too.
Yeah.
If done right. So, those are the kind of areas I'm seeing. The one thing that's really important to note, I think this is probably true across industries, is that to implement these types of technologies, there are the people on the ground today doing these things.
Yes.
And making sure that there's transparency into the evolution of technologies like AI.
Yeah.
You know, the reality is, no, everyone's job isn't going to be replaced by AI, and no, nobody's job. It's not that nobody's job is going to be impacted by AI.
Yeah.
Some jobs will go away. Some new jobs will be created. Some jobs will just change.
Yes.
And so, being able to bring employees and organizations along that journey is really important, especially when you're in a space where you're trying to deliver something that's impacting human health.
Of course, yeah, people, you know, keeping people, that people centricity at the heart of what we're developing. And Mike, that's really your space, you know, in terms of workforce strategy, talent management, and people. So can you talk to us a little bit about how AI is impacting workforce strategy? And just a quick plug, we are going to be going even more in depth into this topic in 4 weeks in a follow-up webinar. So keep an eye out for that. But Mike, over to you.
Well, it's great, and I'm looking forward to the next time we get together as well to participate in that. I remember being part of a group of 100 invited experts that participated in a colloquium over 3 years, over a 3-year period. And the topic was really, what's AI going to do with human resources in the next 50 years? And they had little robots walking around the room and serving us drinks and stuff. But I think the real ability here is the ability to learn again, and how leaders learn, how organizations learn. We used to say that what made for a successful career was having credentials plus having experience. And you know, you did all that, it could lead to success. But now the real new ingredient seems to be, you've got to have credentials, you've got to have experience, but you've got to have the ability to learn. There's been so much AI in human resources over the last 15 years, whether, you know, keyword searches and resumes, and people eventually figured out how to, you know, work that system, right? I'll just type it in a, you know, in a font that's not visible to the reader, and, you know, I'll put in more keywords. You know, we were working back at Genentech, we were working on AI and human resources about how we could automate more of our first-level employee relations complaints. You know, so we didn't have to have a person there, so that you know, oh, my coworker, I don't like the way he or she or they smell. You know, I'll call 1-800-HR and get an answer. Well, you were talking to a bot at that time, giving you some advice about what to do. So it's really figuring out, you know, what matters and how can organizations learn, because despite the advances we're making, I think, in human resources, talk to a person in one company and they say, there's no AI use in my company allowed at all. They block everything. You go to another person, free environment, do whatever you want. And there are still others that want you to keep it secret. Do it at home, but don't, you know, copy and paste it and bring it to work. So I think it's this real ability we have to train managers about what it means to create real innovation, what it means to create real efficiency and effectiveness in organizations. And I think this will be the critical challenge, particularly in the next 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, yeah, we are right on the cusp.
We're right on the cusp.
So Eunice, as we talk about, you know, people and process and product, can you speak a little bit about the security, software development, the enterprise space, and how AI is, what are the impacts we're seeing there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and building on the conversation, great conversation we'll be having here, obviously it's a very detailed topic, but I look at it from, I guess, a phased world, whereas maybe there's a near-term now horizon, there's an immediate, and there's a long-term horizon. The near-term now horizon, I think the reality, as we see, if you look at how we build software, 70 to 80% of the software is already being written by AI. And that's not a surprise to anybody because according to a lot of research, I mean, the last line of new code was written in the 90s. So I think we, as humans, we are building on the innovation that was done already. But AI is here, it's here now, which comes with challenges because a lot of enterprises, it's out of control. I mean, Copilot is part of your subscription. You can find 1,000 tools on AI. The question then becomes, in near term, is that helping you? If you look at the other part of the research and saying that, is that AI code, good code, driving real innovation? The answer, unfortunately, is largely no, because 70% of the code written by AI is, it's going to cost you more bugs, more redesign, more rewrites. So, and that's kind of what I was talking about, the actual versus perceived benefit.
Yeah.
In the near term, AI is happening. It is now, and in a massive scale. 70% is not a small number, and these numbers are not, a small company. We're talking about big, small, medium. People are using AI today. So I think that's the realization that we need to have. Now, if you look at it from an infrastructure perspective and CapEx perspective, a lot of investment has been done on building more and more and more infrastructure. And it's like the 90s. I mean, the infrastructure will get commoditized. It's a race to the bottom. So in the near term, you see the accessibility advantages that large companies have. Small enterprises don't have them today. But in the midterm, I believe what we see and feel like will happen is that these infrastructure environments will become commoditized. Like right now, if you look at large companies in the software space, their profits margins are limited by the fact they don't have enough GPUs. So it's a race to buying more capacity. In the midterm, that's going to become more accessible. Like, how much capacity does the world need? There are some countries who spend trillions of dollars in building infrastructure and they don't have any real applications deployed. So I think we see a phased world where near term AI is here. It's somewhat out of control and chaos, but can be managed with proper strategy and become beneficial. Midterm, that scale becomes accessible to smaller and mid-sized companies. And I think that's what we tell enterprise. Like, even if you're not thinking about it cohesively, you should be, because it's going to become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, that it will be sort of, it'll be stupid not to use it, right? It's kind of a brain dead choice. And in the long term, one of the things I want to mention, I think people miss this quite a bit. We saw with DeepSeek, we see this with OpenAI. There was a lot of focus on developing models, who has the best compute capacity. It's going to take 50 billion. And what we have seen with new models coming in, it's not just a matter of they can do it better and cheaper, but long term, that AI will become more distributed. The reality is that what you could do with OpenAI in a large language model in a cloud requiring billions of dollars, DeepSeek showed us that other models could be run locally. It could be available in your device, in your hands. It could be in a smaller gateway. And so I think long term, what I personally think is we will see an evolution where AI will be accessible in our fingertips, and not just in some high-level applications. You will have the compute capacity. You will have that running in a distributed way, allowing you access to a wide variety of data sets. And it will not be just this one monolithic thing you buy, but it will be, you have data sets, you buy a model from somebody, you buy data set from somebody, you buy expertise from somebody, put it all together, and significantly making the costs, affordability, adaptability cheaper.
Yeah, so as we're talking about, really fully integrating AI into pretty much every element of our personal and our professional lives, making it more accessible on the day-to-day, not just to, the largest organizations in the world, but to everybody. Ethics and the workforce consideration and the trust that needs to be built into these systems becomes so important. So what I'd like to talk about a little bit is, Eunice and Tony, can you talk a little bit about how can AI be leveraged to enhance workforce innovation, collaboration, and efficiency with that concept of sort of the ethics and the trust in mind?
It's challenging.
Yes. No softballs here.
And even if you think about in personal life, right? Like, you're walking down the street and you're talking to the person you're walking with about a sandwich, and then the next time you go onto your Safari on your phone, it's pulling up an ad for sandwich places near where you just were, right? So it's listening to you all the time. So there's an uneasiness and wariness around it that really has to be overcome. And the only way to overcome it is to prove it, that it's not a sort of invasive, that it's not impacting privacy, but it's still augmenting what you want to do. Like I might want to ask my phone, where's the nearest sandwich place, but I don't want it listening to me when I'm not asking. Little things like that. So implementing the technology in a way and being careful not to implement it in another way, which that other way being where it seems invasive, intrusive, and almost a little, what's the word, sort of, it's all hidden and it's not transparent.
Yeah, giving people that choice of how do they want to engage with the technology instead of taking that away from them and hiding it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's, you just hit on it. It's making sure people know when they're engaging with the technology.
Yes.
And that they have a choice to engage with it versus it's forced on them.
Yeah. And Eunice, trust obviously is core to TrustMe.ai. So can you speak a little bit about, the workforce innovation, the collaboration, some of those same topics and efficiency with the lens of the ethics?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the idea that we can, have consistency, trustworthiness across the industry, it's a novel idea, and like we all want to get there. But I think one challenge is that AI is being often thought as a replacement technology versus augmentation. I think a couple of people mentioned that already. I think that's very important, right? Because if you have the potential of or saying that, hey, we're going to bring AI, we're going to cut X, Y, Z, you will not drive workplace transformation, because not only the trust is not there in the technology, but the intent is not there, right? So I think even when you think about building software, driving governance, it's important to think about AI as something that augments humans. It enables them. It is going to make them better, faster, more innovative. And if the investment is, I think, thought of that way, then we're capturing the sort of the intent piece. Why are we bringing AI? Because we want to make people more successful, not get rid of all of them. And that obviously will create the resistance, even if that is not the intent. And I think the going long term, that model or that AI bot, that AI workload, it needs to have its identity, it needs to have verification. And we see that in the workplace, and we're kind of, we saw that in the internet TCP/IP world. If you don't have identity of AI, you don't have trustworthiness of AI, you don't have fingerprinting of AI. Yes, today, because we are so hell-bent on realizing the benefit, I mean, tomorrow it becomes a nuisance that you don't have control over. So I think the intent has to be outweighed, by the benefits, but the benefits should have traceability, they should have an identity, a lifetime that we can come back to and find that accountability. Like, I'll give you guys examples, right, where we're talking about AI, and this is already happening, like becoming your surrogate in terms of taking legal authority, being your admin, replacing a business process that you have. That all sounds good, but what when something goes wrong?
Right. Yes.
What if that surrogate is running air traffic control, right? And we're talking about these things today, like what will happen in those kinds of scenarios. So I think intent, trustworthiness, the ability to trace, govern, it's super important to balance those things together, because that allows us to long-term drive the benefits. When those trillion-dollar data sets are, somebody will have to pay for it 10 years later. And as an ecosystem, I think if we all put our heads together and have thoughtful strategies to implement AIs, and we can build some of those plugs early on versus when it's too late.
Yeah, that's a great insight, sort of making sure that we're building the checks and the balances, the people centricity, the accountability, the visibility into it now. Because it actually, I think a lot of people have the perspective that it's gotten out of hand, it's too late to do these things. We're on a runaway train is some of the fear that you hear, but that's actually not true. We're just on the beginning of this AI journey, and we do still have the power to make sure that it is ethical and transparent and people centric. So as we
I was going to say one thing just to add about that is that when you're looking at the different companies and organizations adapting differently, there's the macro environment, right? AI and what's happening, and there's the individuals. There's also the micro environment that is the company. As an example, if I'm a company that's rapidly growing, let's say I have 100 people doing a function, and I say, well, if I keep doing it the way I'm doing it at the rate I'm growing, in 2 years I'm going to need 150. The automation might, the technology might be leveraged to say, okay, I won't need 150, I need 110.
Right.
I'm actually it's still more jobs for more people.
Yeah.
Because my company's growing. The conversation is very different if maybe my trajectory is different and I'm actually not growing. And then when I talk about automation, I am actually talking about impacting the people that are on the ground working for me today.
Yeah.
And so those factors need to be thought of as well.
Yeah, that's a really good, that's an excellent example in terms of there is still growth. It may look a little bit different than what we're looking at traditionally, but it's still happening in their space. So as we think about that, as we think about organizations prioritizing a more AI-driven or AI-adapted workforce transformation, Mike, Larry, can you talk a little bit about what are some of the considerations as we talk about that element of it?
Yeah, and it'll pick up probably on a lot of the themes that have just been surfaced. A few years ago, I wrote a book, Integrity by Design, Working and Living Authentically. And when I was out promoting that book, sometimes people would say, well, is it okay for me to tell a lie in my organization? And I would say, please don't ask me that. Ask your rabbi or your priestess or, whatever it is, whatever oracle you consult. But I think that, what I know is that trust is foundational to innovation and effectiveness in organizations. And when trust erodes or it diminishes, it's difficult to regain it. So just as I, mentioned about that colloquium I participated in 15 years ago about, what's the next 50 years look like for people in AI, I think we're still dealing with many of the same issues from a leadership perspective and from an organizational perspective. We've got to address bias and fairness. Way back when we were thinking about, well, who's writing the code that's going to tell, that's going to inform this bot to say something to an employee. So we've got to address these issues of bias and fairness in our technologies. We still have to think about issues of transparency and accountability. Who is responsible for this? How can we be transparent? And, as an employee, what's private? What data are you going to share? Whether it's in that human context or whether it's in the sort of industrial context or the service context, all of these issues about bias, transparency, accountability, I think these are real keys that all leaders need to figure out and that we're still dealing with.
Yeah, that's interesting insights in terms of AI is not necessarily changing the foundational concepts of what is ethical and what is moral, but it's accelerating how much we really do have to pay attention to it.
Yes, and we need leaders because all of these issues are going to be under attack.
Yes.
Bias, fairness, transparency, they're under attack. And we're going to need more leaders who share what we do, share what we believe in terms of bringing the best of people and organizations to make money, to build profitability.
Yeah. Larry, can you speak a little bit to what you're seeing in your space around ethical transformations?
Yeah, I think implementing an AI project is like implementing any other project. I think you need to have sort of clear goals, what the trade-offs are, what the vision is. Like when I was at Stanford, we had a tool called the Project Priority Matrix, where we say, hey, your features, your costs, your time to market, what is the constraint, what are you going to optimize, what are you going to sort of accept as is. And I think having sort of that clear vision up front is really important, so you don't build up a bunch of technical debt and you go back and sort of try to sort of solve it. I think interestingly, the end goal isn't just to sort of implement AI. I think implementing AI is like buying a treadmill. Like you're not automatically going to fit because you have to sort of figure out how to use it, not just put your laundry on it and whatnot. And what's really interesting though is I think how you sort of prioritize the use of AI is really going to have a strong impact on sort of the outcomes you have. Like, what Gartner had a survey of a bunch of leading technology companies, and what they found was that basically the leaders in their space are looking at how can you use AI to sort of, improve your business outcomes, to sort of, drive sort of that differentiation. So, sort of optimizing that feature asset, if you will, in that project priority matrix. Whereas I think the laggards are tending to view AI as just a way to maybe increase productivity, cut costs, eliminate sort of a few people sort of here and there. And so I think a lot of this, work sort of needs to be sort of done sort of upfront to sort of figure, hey, what are your goals with this? And I think there's a lot of interesting frameworks out there. I think, the EU AI Act, for example, it gets a lot of criticism from some in terms of being, too burdensome, but Article 9 of the EU Act is about how do you do risk management. Article 10 is about sort of, hey, how do you sort of govern your data? How do you make sure it's free of bias? Articles 11, 12, 13, they're all about transparency, explainability, documentation. And so all of this stuff is about, hey, how can you sort of, look at what the potential risks are and sort of anticipate them rather than waiting for it to happen and then trying to clean up the mess after.
And then fix it after. Yeah, that goes back to so much of what everyone's talking about, where we have the time and the space and the capability right now to help to build in those guardrails and make sure that we're doing things in an ethical, transparent, and trustworthy way as we start to not only develop these solutions, but utilize these solutions in more and more aspects of our life. So we will be touching more on that topic as well in follow-up webinars, but I'd like to turn it over to the audience, those of you that have dialed in today. Thank you for joining us. Our panelists have covered a lot of really interesting topics, a lot of really complicated topics. So go ahead, and if you would like to submit any questions, go ahead in the Q&A chat. I'll be reviewing that, and let's see what's coming in. So here's a good one. We talked a lot about the ethics and the trustworthiness, but what are some of the biggest mistakes that we're seeing? What are other mistakes that you guys are seeing in your industries as people are integrating AI into the workforce, whether that's, not utilizing it to the fullest extent, or not helping educate leadership, or not connecting AI to the value for people and just treating it like the treadmill in your room with, the laundry over it. Anybody want to kick that question off?
Yeah, I can maybe start with some examples, like what we have seen with some customers where they are sort of not having a thoughtful plan, number one, and secondly, when it starts happening, there is no recourse. Like, I am using AI bot to help me write code. Because I used it to write code, I don't understand it, and now if I need to fix it, and I use the AI bot to write more code, so the problem continues to grow. So I think now is the bot successful in writing code? It is, because it's giving you perfectly good code, but did it solve your problem? So I think the lack of thoughtful strategy is very, very critical, right? Big challenge for a lot of companies. It is here, it's happening, people are using the tool, and if you are implementing it in a way where you're just exponentially making what wouldn't be a problem ordinarily a problem, and then making it bigger. So I think even if you don't have, let's say, strong corporate or organization-wide policies on how to do it effectively, at least kind of having the realization that it's happening, it's there, it's now. And if it's going to happen, what am I going to do? How do I enable the employees, people who are going to bring those things? I think that's critically important.
Yeah, don't just buy the shiny object, have a plan for how you're going to use and implement the shiny object. Tony, it looks like you might have had a thought around that.
Yeah, just in terms of the mistakes, and yeah, you're spot on. You missed what you said there. The other thing that I see is that there's a philosophical consideration. What I mean by that is, tech companies are sort of well known for wanting to be disruptive, right? Break it, and replace it, break it and replace it. That doesn't suit every industry. You don't want to just break everything everywhere and replace it. So there's the tech that's driving to sort of disrupt and break things and then rebuild them, when in fact the tech might be more needed to adjust, augment, fix, repair things that exist, not break it.
Yeah.
And so what happens is the mistake that happens is the tech gets ahead of that and is all about sort of being disruptive, doing something new, innovative, different. It might or might not be beneficial, and in fact, in some cases, could be harmful. And so being able to really it goes back to your point of a thoughtful plan of where and how and when do I want to apply this?
Yeah.
When's important too, like the timing.
Yeah,
of where I want to apply the technology. So,
that's an excellent point. Larry, Mike, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think just to sort of follow what Tony said, I think, we oftentimes talk about like a lot of innovation, particularly here in Silicon Valley, is innovation for the sake of innovation. And so I think it's really, how do we sort of connect innovation with sort of human impact? And, we have like, at EIGG, like one thing we've developed, for example, is a thing called the Human AI Index, where we basically look at things at the task level and sort of understand, hey, what are the trade-offs in terms of automating it versus not automating it? But to the question about sort of mistakes, I think one of the mistakes that people make is they basically say, okay, we'll automate what's easy to automate, and the stuff we can't automate, we don't worry about, or we ignore, or we sort of discount and whatnot. And so it's one of those things where I think, it's not going to be easy to sort of go and do this, but we just measure what we can measure, and we ignore the stuff we don't. Like, I think that's sort of a mistake that can be made a lot by organizations.
That's excellent insight. And actually, we have a great question for you, Mike, from one of our attendees who asks, kindly provide some suggestions on where to start learning about AI as it applies to the field of human resources. Any courses or resources, anything that you would recommend people to get started with?
Sure, I'd recommend Golden Gate University. I'd say start in our human resources management program. This is a great place, I think, where we have experienced practitioners who are dealing with these issues every day and who want to create and learn with you. So, we're a great place to start. But I also think it comes back to the topic is we have to reimagine in our organizations and in our universities about what it means to learn. We certainly dealt with this issue in the 90s, Peter Senge, the learning organization, and what that meant. I don't know what we were dealing maybe with the turn of the century crisis at that point or whatever, but in this sort of AI-inspired world, we do have to really think about what it means to learn again. I mean, do I expect somebody to be writing memos or emails on their own, really? What is it? And until we deal with that issue, and I'm not exactly sure how we do it yet, but we have to think about learning communities and what it means to learn.
Yeah.
That's great insight there, that it's really changing the definition of what does it mean to learn.
Right.
I love that.
And just, the data point I heard from the World Economic Forum is basically 44% of people are going to need to sort of reskill themselves. And
Yes.
So you're going to have to learn to sort of keep up. I think the other data point they had was that basically, I think 92 jobs are probably going to be eliminated or changed because of AI. But at the same time, AI is sort of going to grow 170 million new kind of jobs. So I think it's, we got to be, sort of our own recursive algorithm and learn as well as to sort of keep up with this new world.
Very true. And we have a great question around cybersecurity and data governance that's come in. With AI integration being a global phenomenon, which we've been talking about, how does it impact cybersecurity and data governance? I think, Eunice, this is probably pretty squarely in your court.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think with the kind of the rise of AI, security, data governance, process governance, all those things are top of the mind for basically any organization. I mean, we have seen examples of how people will open up their data floodgates and to the large language models and not realizing what they have in place. I think, and what we find very interesting, and it's ironic actually, because a lot of AI governance tools are not using AI themselves, right? They would claim to provide you strategies. I've seen some tools where they'll say, oh yeah, we'll secure you, but this means that you go check this box, and this means that you read this article and you do this. So how do you manage security and governance for data in a world where the technology is changing all the time? So I think looking at essentially true governance, in my opinion, is the answer, which has the ability to, and that's what the problem we've been solving at TrustMe, that provide you real-time governance, not like, hey, I'm going to read OpenAI, and then I'm going to go read the EUAI article. And there are literally startups in the Valley that I wouldn't name, but they're like, well, go check this box and press this button. If you're managing a technology like that, you're signing up for a lot of issues. So I think taking it seriously, looking at ways that provide you real-time, we'd like to call it dynamic governance, because the attacks are different. They are not like what we used to see before. Like, give you some specific examples. We, at software, when you had a software as a service world, you bought software and you kind of thought that it works and it provides you a service. But when you get AI bot in your environment, you don't know if you can trust that bot today. How do you, it does not have an ID card. It has, it's not,
Doesn't have a LinkedIn profile. Yeah.
so the bot has complete ability, and we've seen this again and again, it has the ability to rewrite itself. We've seen meeting notes
Wow.
bots
Yeah.
that will keep taking notes when you're not actually using them. So,
Yep.
so I think taking it, it's going to be probably the number one issue. Like, in the drug industry, I can imagine you have your trial data and like, what if you're not using the bot and it's actively using it for some other processing. So I think having a dynamic strategy for governance, understanding where are you getting your AI from, making sure that it does not have access to more than you would like, and having those check and balances on place continuously, I think, is the answer.
Yeah, that's great insights. And that really also feeds into another question that we have that's come in, which is, as we're thinking about the industries that are really adopting and using AI successfully, I think this is a great one, for Larry, for Tony, where are you seeing the most successful adoption of AI in your opinion? And what are some of the key learnings that we can take from that?
Okay. Honestly, it's been the tangible successes have actually been fairly limited. And I think it's because of the propensity to chase the shiny object instead of the thing that provides business impact. That's not to say there haven't been some successes. So we do see them in whether it's tools to interact, for example, more effectively with patients,
Yes.
and provide some comfort in the patient's interaction with a bot that actually it feels like the patient feels like they can talk to it, right? And if done right, that can be really beneficial. And there have been some examples of that. And then some of the operational areas I've mentioned around, finding root cause of quality issues or better, there's if you're managing a supply chain and there's a volcanic eruption in Iceland, and how do you reroute everything? And so there are some places where it's been effective.
Yeah.
But I think it's still in its infancy, honestly, in terms of providing real impact.
Yeah, good insights there. And Larry,
Yeah, I think, to me, where I think we've seen a lot of activity, I think cybersecurity has done a lot with AI. They've always had agents and things like that in the past, and this is sort of the next level of that. And I think, from a content perspective, I think generative AI, the LLMs, they've been really, I think, useful not only for developing code, but, writing marketing copy, creating videos and sort of things like that. I think what's really interesting is, I think for the first time, industries that maybe weren't as affected by technology, like healthcare and legal. Now, just because, the mass amount of data that can be processed, we're sort of seeing some impact there as well. But I think these are still, I think everybody's point, still very much in the early stages. I think we're seeing more and more pilots. I don't think anybody's, even if a legal AI can do everything a lawyer can, you still want that personal relationship and whatnot. And so that's why I think the human augmentation aspect is really important to all.
Yeah, bringing it back to the people. And, we have more questions. And so for those of you that did ask questions that we weren't able to get to today, we will send out some answers in our follow-up email, and then we are available. And so what we are going to do is we're going to wrap up and close out. And first, thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your invaluable insights. And thank you to all of you online for joining us today. We'll be sending follow-up so that you can get your questions answered and submitted. AI is really rapidly reshaping our workplace, and our goal at TrustMe and in GGU and with this series is to equip all of you with the knowledge, the tools, and the perspectives that you need in order to navigate and excel in this transformation effectively, ethically, with trust, with transparency, and bringing it back to the value for people at the end of the day. So before we wrap up, I also want to encourage you all to join us for the next webinar in our series. That will be on March 5th. And as mentioned and plugged earlier, we're going to be talking about AI ethics and governance in more depth, how to build trust and balancing that with privacy, as we were talking about, what data is getting shared? How is it being used? What is the value that we're bringing back? And I'd like to really extend another huge thank you to our GGU partners, Siazade, Judy Lee, and Robert Schaffner for their leadership and support, as well as, of course, the GGU marketing and on-site teams for all of your hard work in making this event happen. For any feedback, suggested topics, future sessions, to learn more about how, for example, TrustMe can help you ignite growth with unified security, continuous compliance, and seamless governance, you can always get in touch with us at contact@TrustMe.ai or with any of our panelists. We'll be sharing contact information. Or respond to the survey and the email that we'll be sending out after this. We look forward to your feedback, to your suggestions, and keeping it people-centric, the things that you want to learn more about. So thank you again to everyone. I'm Mirya Taig, and it's been a pleasure to moderate today's discussion. See you all at the next session. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mirya. Thank you.